Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Everyone, welcome to this presentation on Rationale for the Quranic System of Sustenance, i.e. Rabubiyat. We will look at some aspects of the reasons for going for Rabubiyat or the system of Deen. And these two books will help to study it further. Introduction to the presentation. Right at the beginning, what I thought was to share a few verses with you to set the scene for our topic today. This is a verse from Surah Nisa. وَمَا لَكُمْ لَا تُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَالْمُسْتَضْعَفِينَ مِنَ الرِّجَالِ وَالنِّسَاءِ وَالْوِلْدَانِ الَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا أَخْرِجْنَا مِنْ هَٰذِهِ الْقَرْيَةِ الظَّالِمِ أَهْلُهَا وَاجْعَل لَّنَا مِن لَّدُنكَ وَلِيًّا وَاجْعَل لَّنَا مِن لَّدُنكَ نَصِيرًا. Now this is quite a famous verse which Allama Pervez referred to very frequently as well. And why should you not fight in the cause of Allah and of those who being weak are ill-treated? Men, women and children who are saying, our Rabb, rescue us from this township whose people are oppressors, and raise for us from you one who will protect, i.e. Wali, and raise for us from you one who will help, Nasir. Now what I've done is I have analyzed it in these three steps. First is there are few facts noted in this verse, and if we look at the verses from 71 to 78, the whole context will become very clear, and the Jamaat-e-Momineen is being addressed in these verses. Now the non-Deen system will create poor and exploit them on a continuous basis. What the verse is pointing is that the non-Deen system, this system which is created and managed by those who do not believe or have Iman in the values of the Quran, then that system, whether they know it or not, it doesn't make any difference. The man-made system will always do this. Those who accept it willingly are also among Zalimeen as they allow it to take place and do nothing. So important point over here is when this situation is created in the world and nothing is done, that means those of us, like us, who claim to be Quranic and do nothing, at least the first stage is to come together and think about it. This verse demands a very high level of self-consciousness and a strong willingness to contribute to the cause of Allah, which is indeed our own cause. So that is important, that this will happen in the world, and it's happening as we speak. Recognizing this state of affairs is part of the process of understanding the system of Deen, which includes Rabubiyat, and thus contributes to the human self's development. And I have highlighted over here certain words. First is Sabilillah, that is the cause of Allah. The cause of Allah is that we should help poor. And the cause of Allah is also that we should establish a system so that poor are not created in the first place. And then we see the address, supplication is to Rabbana. So word Rabb has been used over here. Zalimi ahluha, that the people of this township or the people of this world are doing injustice. And they need a wali and they need somebody to help them. And I've quoted these three verses as well. Please have a look on those in these three verses as well. Now the next is two verses I've quoted over here, which point towards two aspects of Deen. First is that the Deen has been completed as preserved in the Quran. Al-Yawma ya'isal lazina kafaru min dinikum fala takhshawhum wakhshawni. Al-Yawma akmaltu lakum deenakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati wa razaitu lakum al-Islam deena. So this is, I have taken part of the verse from Surah Ma'idah. And what Quran is saying is that the Deen has now reached that stage that it has been completed within the Quran, which is the situation as of today, that whole Deen is within the Quran. And those who are doing kufr, they don't want it. So over here Quran says that you should think of being fearful of the consequences of going against the system of Deen, or what is revealed in the Quran. And then Quran says, Al-Yawma akmaltu lakum deenukum, that your Deen has been completed for you. Just see how many times you has come into it. That this day have I completed your Deen for you, completed my name upon you. So this is a beautiful verse which we can refer to frequently just to remind ourselves. And the second verse is Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat lin-nasi ta'muruna bil ma'ruf wa tanhauna 'anil munkar wa tu'minuna billah walau amana ahlul kitab lakana khayran lahum minhumul mu'minuna wa aktsaruhumul fasiqun. Why I selected this verse is that in this first verse of Surah Ma'idah, the Deen has been completed, and then based on that completed Deen, the Ummah has already been also immersed, and we know it. And what was the task of that Ummah? Was Ta'muruna bil ma'ruf wa tanhauna 'anil munkar wa tu'minuna billah. So deeds are combined with Iman. Walau amana ahlul kitab, and of course the second part is dealing with those who do not accept this system of Deen. Now, I have stated over here that two facts stated here. Firstly, a Deen as a concept and constitution is completed. And secondly, based on this, a model state has also emerged through the efforts of Jamaat al-Mu'mineen as a tangible evidence to demonstrate to those coming later that what is in the Quran has the full potential to become a reality. So, point over here is that Deen has been completed, and this completed constitution can be used to create an ummah in the world. So these are the two aspects I thought keep in mind, and we will move on to the rest of the presentation. I'll first define Rabb and a Deen very briefly. Man-made systems and their limitations. We will look at the salient features of man-made system and what are their limitations. I included it, we have gone over it previously as well, but I thought in relation to Rabubiyat and system of Deen, this is important to remind ourselves. What is the capital system and its salient points? Fundamental issue of body and human self, mechanistic view of life, need for the system of Deen, can human self develop outside the system of Deen, attributes of a self for Deen. Some verses, we will look at some basic verses which give some values for the economic system of the Quran. Then we will look at intellectual rationale for the system of Rabubiyat. The question of finding a motive or incentive. Some impediments on this path, and finally, we will conclude it. Now, first we will look at the word Rabb. This is the root of Rabb as we know it. The basic meanings of Rabb are providing nourishment, i.e. something getting nourished from its starting point and reaches its completion by getting through the gradual process of ever new forms on the way. So the point over here is that new forms on the way. A seed, when we sow it, it goes through various phases until it becomes a fruit-bearing tree. And same goes for human beings. We have to go through different stages of life. Even our body goes through different phases of life until it dies. This technique of nourishment is called Rabubiyat, and the one who gives nourishment in this way is called Rabb. In this technique, aspects of reformation, correction, and strengthening are also implied. And since the natural consequence of nourishment is beauty and exquisiteness, this is why Ribato are those plants whose greenery and freshness remains the same in all seasons. So this is important that when we follow this as human beings, then we should be evergreen and ever fresh for all seasons. That is, which includes the hereafter as well. From the above, the basic meanings of Rabbun become clear, i.e. nourishment, one who takes to completion, organizer of affairs, reformer, one taking forward and one who bestows strength, i.e. one who takes everything from its starting points to its completion. So we observe this in our world around us, that plants, they grow and then they finally bloom and bear flowers or fruit, whatever they're meant to do. Same goes for animals, same goes for our body. But over here, when we look at ourselves, and the topic of our presentation today is related to ourself, it will become clearer that ourself also goes through various phases. And if we think that the life ends with death, then obviously self will be developing on a different pattern than the self which thinks that the life will go beyond that. Applying this to the creation and existence of man will mean that the aim for which man has been created, he should get required nourishment so that he can achieve that purpose for which he has the latent potentials kept within him. So important is just like a seed of a tree or a plant, whatever potentials are within that seed, if those do not display them and do not come out fully, then that means that seed has not achieved its potential. Similarly, within us, within ourselves, within our intellectual abilities, within our consciousness, there are abilities which we can develop. This nourishment will include everything related to this aim, and this process is called Rabubiyat. And the system which provides this environment and nourishment is called the system of Deen. So this is the link between that. Rabubiyat is a process within the system of Deen through which the development of human self takes place. Verses 79, 25, and 12, and 42 relating to the use of Rabb. The word term Rabb has been used by Pharaoh. If you remember, Pharaoh said, Ana Rabbukumul A'la. And of course, he was also responsible for the nourishment and sustenance of people of Egypt under his rule. And Yusuf referring to the king in Egypt. In the case of Yusuf, he did manage to organize Rabubiyat, though details are not provided. Some details are provided in the Quran, and this is for some other time. Now, we define a Deen. This is such a comprehensive term of the Quran that it encompasses with it the complete summary of its teachings. This is its focal point, a central point around which its commands, principles, values, and laws revolve and bring forward their objectives. By understanding the correct meaning of this term, Islam can be understood. And if the Quranic concept of it disappears from minds, then nothing of Islam can be correctly comprehended. For example, neither its beliefs and concepts, nor its pillars and commands, nor its objectives and requirements, nor its need and outcome. So Deen is a very comprehensive term. We all know it. It has been used throughout the Quran, and we have to see in what context the term has appeared within the Quran. This word holds very wide meanings. On one hand, it means control, authority, rule, state constitution, law, organization and administration, concrete outcome, reward and punishment, the law of requital. And on the other hand, when this word is used in reference to human beings, then its meanings are obedience, compliance, submission. And when its reference is made towards Allah and man, then it will mean obedience of Allah's laws, the consequence of which is the outcome according to the established divine laws. So we can see that Deen has a lot of connotations, and we can figure it out as we go through the Quran. And the overall Deen includes all these aspects which are noted here. Now, there are many verses, in fact, there are numerous verses on which have used the word Deen. Over here, I have quoted one verse, Afagaira Deenallahi Yabguna Walahu Aslama Man Fis Samawati wal Arde Taun wa Karhan wa Alayhi Yurja'un. Do they ask for other than Deen of Allah? While all creatures in the heavens and the earth have willingly or unwillingly bowed to his laws, and to him shall they be brought back. The Quran has made it very clear that whatever is happening in this world is following the laws of Allah, Deen Allah. And this includes our body as well as human self. If human beings go against the laws of Allah, they suffer, and that suffering is part of the same process. Now, let us look at man-made systems and their limitations. First is, very briefly, I have noted over here the capitalist system. In the capitalist system, the reward is for the capital, not the work. The rich hold the power and control the system. Few control the flow of the capital and the means of production, while the rest are employed with general profits. A laborer is not seen as a human being, but a means to make profit. The capitalist system pays the minimum to labor class with which it can get away. It has no interest whether it meets their needs or not. One of their claims is that rich create jobs, and as jobs are created, this will trickle down to all in a society. It's about making as much profit as possible. It's profit-directed system. Now, this is important that if we are discussing Rabubiyat and the rationale for Rabubiyat and the system of Deen, then we ought to know that what exists in the world and why it needs to be replaced. The communist system, there is a ruling class in the system which controls all the means of production and then employs everyone and meets their basic needs. In this system, human beings are turned into non-thinking robots on the payroll of the Communist Party. Human beings really become just like animals. And whereas within the capitalist system, at least there is some intellectual activity which takes place towards innovations and discoveries and to take the market economy forward. The socialist system, it is a mix of the capitalist system and the communist system. Some higher taxes help generate more money for the government, and this is redistributed among the lower class. There is one point over here which I would like to point our attention, which is that government takes taxes. Why not allow people, why not give people less in the first place, and the taxes which are being deducted, why not take them away at the government's end? So the whole process is to keep people busy. If we look at the whole system of this taxation, first give them a bit more and then try to take it away to keep people busy and let them not draw their attention elsewhere, because all the time their efforts are to save some of these taxes, and then the tussle starts in, and then there are departments which do this and deduct taxes, income tax offices in every country. So this is quite interesting. If we look at it, the whole system is to make people busy all the time and not to think on the wider issues of life. So there is no chance of self-development in these systems. In all man-made systems, ultimate authority for lawmaking is either one man or a body of men at the top. We should keep this in mind, because in order to study Rabubiyat, we have to be fully convinced that the system which Quran is giving us, we must be fed up with the man-made system. If we are not completely fed up, and we being the beneficiary of this system, then we are not going to take full advantage of what the Quran is trying to tell us, or is trying to convince us. By virtue of possessing a self, no man has the right to ask other men to obey any man-made value system or laws. This is against the intrinsic value of respect and dignity given to man. Those who wish to establish the system of Rabubiyat need to come to this conclusion through their own choice, absolutely essential. And to make that choice, we must have complete information. The self which does not understand this cannot be of any use in the establishment of the Deen of Allah. Now, let us look at some salient features of the capitalist system, because this is a system which is really working throughout the world at the moment. Power and wealth are concentrated at the top and in few hands. Individuals and a collection of individuals are at the top. Common man at the bottom is crushed. Economics defines the whole purpose of the human creation. Life ends with death. That is the assumption. Hence, no accountability, no purpose of human life, which is against Rabubiyat. Because then human beings become an animal, and animals have no higher purpose of life. No upper limit on wealth and possessions, including land. Some national laws try to curb this. Currency manipulation is part of this system. We can see all these things going on right in front of us. Deliberately creates classes and parties. This is part of the relative value system. Profit making is the aim. Human respect and dignity are ignored. Powerful and rich create conflicts and wars on a continuous basis. Fear and huzn are the hallmarks of this system. Human self-development never forms part of such a system. Those who control the system never think of a self in relation to the life of the hereafter. No question of concept of Allah ever entering into it. And last is relative values which work in the capitalist system are in all man-made systems. Is might is right, divide and rule, ends justify the means. There is no accountability for the people at the top. We only have one life. I'm here to enjoy my life, etc. And we hear these words in some context on media. Now, the fundamental issue before us is human being is really a term for both the physical body and the self. So we are a combination of the two. Both aspects of the human being, that is physical and self, require nourishment and development. So we need it. The body develops by taking, the self develops by giving. So they are opposite of each other. These two principles of nourishment are totally opposed to each other. When we receive, our self does not develop. And when we give, our physical body misses out. The Quran tells us that this conflict can be easily resolved. It is possible to establish a system in which the seemingly opposite demands of body and self are simultaneously met. And so both are developed and strengthened. This type of system can be described as a Rabubiyat, a divine system of universal sustenance. It is a system in which both the needs of the body and the self are completely met. Now over here, though I have written this, and I've taken it from one of the books of Allama Pervez, but we should keep it in mind that the body and the self, while in a system of Rabubiyat, facilities are available, and the system provides good environment for this. End of the day, it will be choice of individuals, whether they want to develop their self or not. The system cannot impose it on anyone. In any case, we cannot impose it because we are a complete unit at the level of ourself. Hence, it becomes possible in both the present and future, that is in the world and in the hereafter. And I've given this reference over here. Now, we look at the materialist point of view, or we also call it mechanistic viewpoint. The human being is merely the sum of his physical parts, and this Rabubiyat is likewise confined to the physical, i.e. the meeting of food, shelter, and other material needs. And this is the way the world is organized. Everyone thinks, most of the people live their life, that their physical life will end with that. This is the only life I have, so I should make the best use of it. We can find solutions to the issue of meeting our physical needs only by utilizing our intellect and by no other means. So there is no concept of wahi or any external guidance. People think that our intellect can guide us. Holding defines this kind of system. Intellect serves to protect self-interest. We see it all around us. To protect their self-interest, humans become obsessed with acquisition and hoarding. It follows that after taking care of themselves, people become consumed in their desire to hoard for their children. At this point, therefore, a mere need to survive turns into greed. And these are the points which have pushed us to seek guidance and come to the Quran. So we should keep all these things in mind as we go through our various presentations. Difference in intellectual capacity. The root cause is greed and selfishness in human society. It is a battle of wits. So whoever has a stronger intellect and whoever has got more capital, they are in a better position to accumulate more. Whoever has greater intelligence is usually more successful. The intellect devises all kinds of schemes with the aim of acquiring and saving. This leads to the creation of economic classes. Whoever has a greater intellect, therefore, has a greater capacity to earn. Now, let us look at some of the summing up of the mechanistic viewpoint. Human sustenance means meeting the physical needs of humanity. Humanity can resolve the issue of meeting its physical needs by utilizing the intellect. So this is the conclusion of the system which we find around ourselves. The intellect serves to protect self-interest and is unconcerned with protecting the interests of others. Every individual or intellect is chiefly concerned with acquisition and saving, and alter in his life he continues the same conduct, both in view of protecting the interests of his progeny and also out of habit. Different people have various levels of intelligence, and so their capacity to earn also varies. And we see it all around us. People, for example, in financial side are those who are dealing in stocks. They think themselves clever. Even people who are higher ups in banking industry, they also think they are at a higher level, and the system supports them. The brighter members of society earn more and are therefore able to acquire more private property. As more of these resources become privatized, these become restricted to rest of the population, the outcome of the capitalism. We should keep it in mind that in the world there are finite resources, and these are to be recycled and these have to be made sustainable. And if we keep these things in mind, and then once we come to the next presentation on the system of Deen, then we will see how the Quran helps us to solve these problems. Human intellect alone cannot offer an effective argument against capitalism for the reason that this system is itself the product of intellect. This is very interesting comment, that if human intellect has produced a certain system at any point in time, that same intellect is not going to go against it, because that is the best it could produce at that point. And if the interest of that intellect is in that system, then that intellect is not going to go against that system which it has created in his own interest. Thus, human society divides into socio-economic classes, and with time, the rich-poor divide becomes ever more acute. Now, over here, I have given an illustration. I thought we have, I think, shared it before as well, but I thought just to repeat it, that process of creating and producing, for example, I've used the analogy of a car being designed and produced in a manufacturing plant. What happens is process of creating and producing a car to meet a need, that is the market need. And what we do is we manufacture all its parts, design it, and procure the raw material, and then assembly of all parts on the assembly line, and the labor is employed to put it together. And final quality control is done, and the car is tested and is ready and is now going over to the market. And we can take any example. For example, it could be a 2-liter engine hybrid car, a 4-seater automatic AC, cruise control. All these things are added to different cars to enhance their marketing. And what I've done is working backwards, market need identified, and wheel set in motion to create a hybrid car. So, end product, which we thought is hybrid car for the market, then we set up the whole manufacturing to produce that car. And same can be applied to the hereafter, need for a system of being. Now, mankind placed on the planet, we have been created, or we have appeared on this planet. Man with choice and intent, we have choice and intent, appeared on the scene, but he arrived as a guidance for mankind. So human beings are told right from beginning that you have a choice and intent. Either you live your life according to your desires, or you live your life in the guidance of Wahi. And why? Because there is a hereafter linked with your life, and hereafter needs a certain kind of individuals, a certain kinds of self. So if you establish a system in this world which helps to produce those kind of selves for the hereafter, for which the whole system of the universe has been created, then that will be a successful life. Just like that car. If the manufacturing process does not produce that car, then that car will never exist in the first place. So in order for that car to sell, that car has to be produced by the system of manufacturing. And same goes over here. If we do not have a system of being, then I'm afraid we will not have many selves which are going on to the next life. Moment selves acquired Iman and through Amal Saleh reached minimum threshold of the understanding of the system of Deen. And all moment selves come together and establish the system of Deen. And then just before death, individual self acquired that eminence and there, and the system of Deen is in place. And then the final product, the human self, has turned into that product which is fit for the hereafter. So I try to look at it from that aspect, that what is the requirement of the hereafter? And if we do not have the system of Deen, then essentially we are not providing opportunities to all our children, to all human beings, to avail the chance or to have a choice, at least to make an attempt to develop their self for the hereafter. And in the process, we suffer in this life. And of course, if we do not have a self for the hereafter, then obviously we have a problem. Now, working backwards, creation need identified first by looking at the life of the hereafter, and then we have to look at the criteria for that. Now, can human self develop outside the system of Deen? This has been a question which has been in my mind, as well as I have seen some articles written as well, that the self cannot develop outside the system of Deen. So I thought to give some points over here, which we can discuss in our question answer session as well. The answer to this is, in my understanding, is yes, because this needs further elaboration. The reason is that end of the day, whenever the system of Deen will come and will emerge out of the non-Deen system, there have to be certain selves which will come together, create a Jamaat-e-Mu'minin, and then go on to establish that system. So self can develop, but obviously if the system of Deen is not there, these individuals who initially come together, they will have to make far, far more effort than subsequently once the system is in place. When there is no system of Deen, we have to make a start from somewhere. And even in a collective system of Deen, Mu'minin and others will retain their individuality, unity and integrity of the human self. The law of requital is related to our individual deeds as well as to our collective deeds. So the point which I think we should keep it in mind is that even in the system of Deen, individual will still retain their individuality. They still will have their own self, and they will still be responsible for their own development. But within a system of Deen, that environment, it will be relatively easier. The process of seeking guidance, acquiring Iman, and then developing this newly acquired state of the self through solid deeds without an external compulsion is equally applicable to every one of us. The Quran makes this fundamental value very clear and provides numerous criteria to verify it. And there is nothing left to ambiguity. If we look into the Quran, we will see that there is plenty of evidence that individuals, even outside the Deen, can make an effort and raise the level of their self-development where they can work towards the system of Deen. Inbuilt is the creation of a need and desire to join other mu'mineen within the acquisition of Iman and Amal Salih. Now, this is an important point in my understanding, that if we acquire Iman and then do solid deeds with a view to develop ourselves to a higher level of eminence, then a stage comes where we wish to be with those who are also working in that direction. This essentially becomes the need of the human self to aspire for the establishment of the system of Deen. This is clearly noted by the Quran in many verses. If this does not appear in ourselves, then we need to intensely reflect on this aspect and look for the cause of it. I think the verse over here is 103, not 105. Need to question, what is holding me back? Need to discuss with others who have acquired this attribute. So it is important that we discuss with others as well, that if the urge has not arisen within us to work with others, like the TOLU-E-ISLAM platform, then we need to question it, that why I'm not feeling like that. Having come together with those with the same outlook needs cementing the bond until no difference remains in the understanding of the system of Rabubiyat. Hence, we need to resolve the issue of mankind. This is the stage where we need to remove any of our inner doubts. For example, TOLU-E-ISLAM is the only platform which projects the pure teaching of the Quran, i.e. system of Deen or Rabubiyat for whole of mankind. When we are on Sirat-e-Mustaqim, then expressing doubts without referring to the Quran is not good for the development of self. I added this line at the last minute. The reason is that at times I've seen people express, or members express, some kind of a doubt. And my view is, and my understanding is, that once we have hit the Sirat-e-Mustaqim and we are making an effort, we have come together, then we should remove these doubts as soon as possible, because doubts slow us down. That's the problem. Incentive for the system of Rabubiyat. Part of the development process of the self which introduces us to a higher aim in our life. So this is important, that we should know that this is the process of self-development, and this is how the Rabubiyat works. That is, I have to make an effort to develop my own self within the values of the Quran. The acquisition of the divine attributes and then their manifestation leads to increased understanding of the purpose of the human creation, and many obscured aspects of this worldly life become manifested on us. We have seen it that a lot of these points, which sometimes people think there are a lot of good points around in the man-made systems, and they miss that because they haven't fully grasped the system of Rabubiyat which the Quran has presented. These otherwise cannot be understood by the human psyche without exposure to the Quranic Iman, because Quran makes us or enables us to look very deep into the bottom, into the right at the foundation level of the problems which human beings create. The five constituents of Iman become crystal clear, which become enhanced through Saleh deeds. The possibility of getting Allah's help appears as a reality if a Jamaat emerges through these efforts. We have talked about it previously as well. The understanding of the functioning of the law of requital becomes very clear, and this leads to becoming extremely conscious of its presence, and this knowledge then can be used for the creative activity in this life under the system of Deen. The reality of all human beings as equals, possessing the same self with the same I, leads to this understanding that the good carried out for the whole of mankind helps develop oneself, which enables it to manage the system of Deen. If we feel uncomfortable with the problems created by the non-Deen system, and we wish to avert this state into a different world, i.e. earthly heaven, then this also serves as a motive to work for the system of Rabubiyat. Working for the system of Rabubiyat means that we become fully dissatisfied with the system created by human intellect. So we have to have a lot of aversion towards the system which is created by human hands. This has to be 100% rejection of this system of exploitation of mankind at a large scale. And Quran differentiates between the two by calling one Zulmat and another Nur. So we should keep it in mind that Nur is the one where we start looking at things as these are. The reality presents itself. It becomes Haqq. This system, this is part of our agreement to become companions of Allah and to strike a deal with Him, i.e. nafs plus possessions handed over to Him so that the system of Deen can be established. This earthly heaven then becomes connected with the paradise of the hereafter. See how I've tried to bring it together. The system of Deen has to be linked with the system of Deen in the hereafter. And that is only possible if we conceptualize it clearly in the light of the Quran, that what the system of Rabubiyat will look like. Now, attributes of the self required for the life of the hereafter. I put down some points here, and we can always expand on it. It is clear about the existence of its own self and its needs. So over here, what I mean is that we should be fully aware that I have a self, I have a nafs, and that can be developed, and that needs to be developed. If it is already developed, then I say it should be developed more. And if it is developed more, I should be aiming to even develop more. So there should be a bit of restlessness involved here. Has acquired precisely the same Iman as put forward by the Quran, has full conviction that he or she possesses it. The evidence lies in doing solid deeds and seeking out other mu'mineen and working with them. So 3103 is very frequently referred in our presentations. And the reason for that is it is a verse which gives very clearly the position before acquiring the Iman and after Iman has been acquired. Has persistently done solid deeds and continuing to do so as noted by the Quran, and has reached the optimum level of understanding of the system of Deen. Very important, the self has to continue to develop. And if we feel stagnant at any point, we need to discuss it with others as well as make more efforts, do some more solid deeds. Is fully committed to the establishment of the system of Deen, feels an urge to join those who are also pursuing the same objective. Does not go outside the pure Quran and has acquired good understanding of the Quranic system of sustenance and its rationale. Applies the law of requital consciously to own thoughts and deeds and also to judge others. Judgment in the light of the Quran is an important constituent of this developed self. So sometimes people say, oh, nobody has a right to judge me, which is in itself is a self-judgment. So we are being judged, whether we like it or don't like it. So it is better to accept it and bring it open and become very conscious of it. Is absolutely certain about himself or herself being on Sirat al-Mustaqim by using the Quranic criteria on a continuous basis. He knows uncertainty and doubts weaken human resolve, and by understanding the concept of the Rabubiyat is fully determined to contribute to the effort of other mu'mineen. About judgment, important thing is being Quranic and having a Quranic self, we always judge in the light of the Quran. And secondly, rather than being negative, we have to guide each other. That is the important thing. Of course, we have to be tactful because at times people become offended. Permanent values defining the economic basis. Now, over here, I have quoted some verses which Allama Pervez has gone into a lot of detail in one of his verses. Allah taziru waziratum wizra ukhra. This value states that no bearer of burdens can bear the burden of another. We must understand that each self is responsible for its own self, its own burdens, its own deeds, its own thoughts. So this will be the basis of the Quranic system. In the system of Deen, everyone will be made aware of it. وَأَنْ لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانَ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. Very important that man should get what he strives for. Because if we remember that the Quran has said that لِتُجْزَ كُلُّ نَفْسٍ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ, that whatever human beings will do, they will get will be recompensed for that. So in a system of Deen, whatever efforts we make, we will have the results of those efforts. The important point over here is, I have given it a lot of thought, is that, for example, if I can do some work up to the level of 4, just for example, and if I do not do my best and I do the work of level 2, then essentially I'm doing wrong to my own self. And that motivation has to come from within me, that if I'm capable of doing work to the level of 4 for my own good as well as for the good of everyone, then I should make full effort to do the work up to the level of 4. وَأَنَّ سَعْيَهُ سَوْفَ يُرَى. And in that system, his striving will soon come in sight. See, in the system of Deen of Allah, whatever we do, it has an impact on ourselves. In the system of Deen established by human beings, we have to make it so accountable, but without creating any fear, where people become, the self-accountability of everyone becomes so high that they could see the results of their own efforts. So the system has to be organized in such a way, it has to be so creative and so appreciating that people are encouraged to do as much good as possible, be as creative as possible in every field, whether it is scientific discoveries or research or even molecular biology and the human body and looking at the galaxies and the solar system and whatever is not yet discovered and what is yet to be discovered. So all this comes under this aspect. ثُمَّ يُجْزَهُ الْجَزَاءَ الْأَوْفَى. Then will he be rewarded with a reward complete. So in that system, appreciation has to be done. People should be appreciated, respected, and they should feel valued as individuals. The children coming into this life should feel happy once they grow up and they achieve the consciousness. So we will go through these aspects once we discuss the finer aspects of the system of being. وَأَنَّ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ الْمُنْتَهَى. And of course, the muntaha of Rabb, the Rabubiyat, is that man can achieve that level of self right in this world, where he is able to pass on to the next life right at the highest possible level. And of course, Khulqun Azim, as the Quran has noted about Rasulullah, that should be the aim. What's needing our initial attention? Now over here I have quoted some verses from Surah Taha. Innani anallahu la ilaha illa ana fa'budni waqimis salata li zikri. If you remember, this is Hazrat Musa meeting Allah and not meeting, but attending to the call. And over here Allah says, verily I am Allah, there is no ilah but I, so obey me, that is follow my laws. And as a consequence, establish the system of Deen for my dhikr. And if we remember, the Quran has declared the book to be zikrukum, that is our zikr, is mentioned in that Surah Anbiya 21 chapter verse 10. And then idinna saata atiyatun aqadu ukhfiha litujza kullu nafsin bima tasa. And Quran says that the hour is coming. People were thinking, people were praying, people were asking that when the system of Deen will come. And Quran over here says that my design is to keep it hidden. It is always initially hidden because people rise gradually, come together and think about it and organize themselves. For every self to receive its reward by the measure of its endeavor. If we see the same words is used, tasa, laisa lil insana illa ma sa'a. So whole thing is that whatever efforts human beings are doing at present, they are not getting full reward for that. There are poor people who work the same hours, but they are paid very little. That their basic needs are not even met. فَلَا يَسُدُّنَّكَ عَنْهَا مَنْ لَا يُؤْمِنُ بِهَا وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ فَتَرْدَىٰ. This is a very important part of this sequence of conversation which is going on and noted in Surah Taha. That over here, Quran, Allah is warning, giving a warning to us, and of course, the direct address at the time was Hazrat Musa, is that let not such as have no iman therein, but follow their own lust, divert you therefrom, lest you perish. So we should be very, very alert about those people who try to slow us down or divert our attention. And this is possible, because people will say, oh, this is impossible, this cannot be done. But this is a gradual process, and we should try our best to do whatever we can, and then see how the results shape up. Now, there are some permanent values defining the basis of the system. The first one is the law of requital, as we know it. وَخَلَقَ اللَّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ بِالْحَقِّ وَلِتُجْزَىٰ كُلُّ نَفْسٍ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ. We know about this verse that Allah has created the heavens and the earth so that each self is recompensed for what its deeds, and no one is treated unjustly. And then is this verse, وَإِذْ أَخَذْنَا مِيثَاقَ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ لَا تَعْبُدُونَ إِلَّا اللَّهَ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا وَذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَقُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ ثُمَّ تَوَلَّيْتُمْ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِنْكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ مُعْرِضُونَ. And over here, if we take it as a general verse providing guidance for us, that what Quran has said is that Walidaini Sanan Zil Qurba Wal Yatama Wal Masakin should be the central point of the beginning of this system of Rabubiyat. And then it goes on to say that this should lead to Aqimus Salata wa Atuz Zakata. I think we have gone through this verse previously as well. Now over here, the next one, I have quoted part of this verse. أَفَتُؤْمِنُونَ بِبَعْضِ الْكِتَابِ وَتَكْفُرُونَ بِبَعْضٍ فَمَا جَزَاءُ مَنْ يَفْعَلُ ذَلِكَ مِنْكُمْ إِلَّا خِزْيٌ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. So the Quran has warned us over here that do not mix with the book. Do not contaminate the formula of the Quran. Because if you do this and mix it, then you will not get the results. So this is something which we have to keep reminding ourselves. And we should be telling each other as well. That where some mixing takes place inadvertently, if it is deliberate, of course, then we will know it. But sometimes because of lack of understanding, if people mix it up, then we need to be very cautious. وَخَلَقَ اللَّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ بِالْحَقِّ وَلِتُجْزَىٰ كُلُّ نَفْسٍ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ. Now, I have used this verse again to look at the human self, and we have gone through some of these points, but I thought as a reminder we should go through it again in a slightly different, covering slightly different aspects. Nafs, all human psyche referred here. When Quran says nafs, it means the whole of human self. Tasab, the deeds are actions. Human body is, and it is related to human body. Its optimum use is hands, legs, feet, brain, senses, appearance, everything is covered. If these are not used productively, then this is zulm. So this is interesting, that if we can do certain things positively, amal saleh and other things, then if we are not doing it, then it becomes injustice. I.e., what we could do to benefit us and others, we did not use this opportunity. So this should be kept in mind, that this will be the hallmark, right at the foundation level of the system of Rabubiyat. That a body has been given to us to use it for the good of mankind. And if we are not employing it for that purpose, then we are falling short of that criteria. I plus consciousness. Now, this is where human self is. Our sense of identity, which does not change, but everything around it keeps transforming into a new human being as it experiences life. We need to develop ability to recognize this change within us. This is important, that if we do not recognize it, then we will feel as if we are not making any progress. each salih deed should elevate the status and our consciousness a step higher. And this is important because if we do not recognize that, then that means that we are static. So that means we are doing the deeds mechanically. We are not fully conscious of it. Our brain gives us intellect, desires, emotions, feelings, memory, and we should keep it in mind. Our physical body, which follows physical laws, for example, food, clean air, sunshine, sleep, exercise, rest, work, they affect it. It ages whether we like it or not. So we should be conscious of our aging process. It ultimately dies. We experience our passing physical life, sometimes more aware than other times. As a possessor of a Quranic self, we need to be conscious of our own physical death as a deadline in this world. Optimize our thinking and efforts. So this is important that death should be seen as a deadline for the development of our own self. So this is part of the system of Rabubiyat, that in this life we have finite time, and then we have to lay out some kind of a plan in front of us that in order to establish the system of Rabubiyat and Deen, what maximum I can do at this point in time. So this is important, which I thought we should keep it in mind as we are making these efforts together. Our body acts on our direction through our brain, our mind. Eye makes decisions and body acts through our nervous system. Thoughts come first and then deeds. So every time thoughts come, we have to evaluate them. Brain continuously throws the thoughts on us. This point has been mentioned previously as well, for example, by Dr. Hamid in one of his presentations. Being fully aware of our thoughts, our deeds, and their impact on our consciousness, which changes our sense of being, is part of the process of our self-development. So our self means that we should become as conscious of our own thought process as possible, and also our own sense of being at any point in time. If we understand it fully, then we will exactly know the need for Deen or Rabubiyat in relation to the human self. Because understanding this will help us to understand the importance of its development. A lot of questions which come to people's minds are they try to detach their self from the environment in which they are living. And as a result, they do not understand that what impact their belief system, even their Iman and Amal Salih is having their own self. And with a little effort, they can figure it out themselves. Thematic, higher level of understanding and steadfastness. Looking for guidance as not happy with the word around. And if we remember in 93.7, it says, Wajadaka dal and fahada, that in context with Rasulullah, that you were looking for guidance and we gave you guidance. This is a permanent value, a sort of a permanent values where if we are not looking for guidance, we will not get it. And for that guidance, we have to be first fully dissatisfied with the world around us. Purpose of human creation, the law of requital 45:22 links with this. So we should keep this in mind all the time. Acquiring Iman, verse 2, 177. If we look at it, it says that the expanse of our consciousness cannot expand unless we have Iman, as noted in the verse, and then do what is following those 5 constituents of Iman. Understanding the link between Iman and Salih deeds. It's extremely important because this is where the hope comes in. And if you remember, we have gone through this verse under Amal Salih, 24th chapter, 55 verse, where Quran says that Allah will help you to establish Deen. Developed selves, they then come together, and selves, they coalesce together, they join together, and their hearts become one. And then is education and training together related to Deen. And then next step is Jamaat grows in numbers and some members meet the criteria for Deen versus al-Mu'mineen. Over here, what I have written is that it is important that those of us who are desperate for the system of Deen, they have to raise the eminence level of their own self as related to 24:55. And then man-made system declines and Deen gradually emerges as a concept. And then, of course, we don't know at this stage how things will pan out. But this is generally, I thought, to share my thought process or my understanding with you. Now, I have noted, I've given it a slightly lighter touch over here, a motorway analogy. That there is a motorway, let's say this is the motorway of the hereafter, and it is going at a certain speed. And we observe it as we merge with the motorway in the human world. And being in the hereafter, there's a dynamic way of life continuously evolving and created. And it has its own speed, and what we do is that we are trying to enter into this hereafter. And we have to have a merging speed so that we do not, if we are very slow, obviously, then we will have a problem in joining with what is already taking place. So our effort should be that we try to join it at as higher speed as possible so that we can conveniently merge with it. You may not like this analogy, but I thought I'll share it with you. Now, we come to an important part of this presentation, rationale for the system of Rabubiyat that is emerging from the capitalist system. Now, this aspect is covered by Allama Pervez, and I have referred to it, some of our members, but I thought we need to go into slightly more detail just to share with everyone my understanding. The intellectual ability which every child gets at birth, intellectual ability is bestowed free as a gift by nature at birth. It has neither been bought nor can be bought by an individual. So every child gets certain intellectual ability at the time of its birth. This is a fact. Some get less than the others, depending on the genes and the physical makeup and those things. Initial environment, education, and effects of upbringing. This factor is related to the society in which an individual is born, for example, parents, status, wealth, gender, and the kind of family and environment in which one is brought up. So the way we can relate it to the world around us, because that is required. Whatever is going to come out of the present world, whoever is going to go for the establishment of system of Deen will be facing this. So initial environment, education, and these things affect each and every child. The children brought up in a better family have more opportunities to develop their intellect as compared to, let's say, a child of a laborer. Opportunities for the use of ability and skills. This factor is also dependent on the place of birth and parents and their ability to support their children. Very obvious example, the children who are brought up, for example, in the West, they get better opportunities as compared to the children who are brought up in an underdeveloped world. The personal hard work of a man, only this factor, the personal hard work of an individual is such a thing which the person utilizes by employing his own intent and choice. And this is important to understand that the work which we do after acquiring all these abilities and the overall self which we have, it should try to understand that how much of it is his own and how much of it is by the choice of birth, by the lottery of birth. If, for example, a child is born over here in the West in a highly educated family and has the same intellect as a child born at the same time in Africa or in a poor country and an underdeveloped country in the house of a laborer, that child of a laborer is not going to get all these opportunities. Whereas this child who is by the lottery of birth is born in a developed society in the family of educated parents and has a better start, then he or she is, whatever work they do, that work, a lot of that work owes it to this environment. And that is the point here. So this child should look at it from the Quranic point of view and see that it is important to change the system so that equal opportunities are provided to everyone. And this is an important point for developing a rationale for the system of Rabubiyat. It is essentially providing an incentive and motivation to ourselves to work for this system. Because presently the system created by human beings is grossly unjust. And in a grossly unjust system, it becomes impossible, particularly children who are from a poorer background, and those whose parents cannot support them to avail or to develop their potentials, even economically. So this is the point which we need to keep it in mind, and Quran repeatedly points to that. If we remember in Surah Yasin, Quran says when they are asked to spend on others, they say why Allah doesn't give them from His own self. And the Quran calls it Zalalim Mubin. فَإِذَا مَسَّ الْإِنسَانَ ضُرٌّ دَعَانَا ثُمَّ إِذَا خَوَّلْنَاهُ نِعْمَةً مِنَّا قَالَ إِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُهُ عَلَىٰ عِلْمٍ بَلْ هِيَ فِتْنَةٌ وَلَٰكِنَّ أَكْثَرَهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. And this is the verse which says that now when trouble touches man, he cries to us, but when we bestow a favor upon him as from ourselves, he says, this has been given to me because of a certain knowledge I have. Nay, but this is a trial, it's a fitna, but most of them understand now. So the Quran is pointing to this fact that whatever you are getting in this world through the man-made system, somehow you are not relating it to sharing it with others. And this is the important point to understand, that whatever we are seeing around us, those of us who have benefited from the system, they owe it to the system of Rabubiyat by virtue of getting higher benefits, that we work hard to establish this system. Because the personal hard work of a man, of course, in the system of Deen, the rewards will be related to the hard work, but that will not be the economic rewards, because as far as basic needs are concerned, every human being has the same needs. We will touch this in detail once we come to the finer aspects of the system of Deen. The question of motive for the system of Rabubiyat. It cannot be mechanical. Mechanically imposed motive can never last very long. People who work for a job cannot stay motivated every day, very little incentive. So in the system of Deen, it's never mechanical. This has to come from within us, that I'm working for the development of my own self. And for that, obviously, we need education, training, and in that process we have to go through. It cannot be imposed from outside. Fear of losing a job, fear of punishment, not able to find another job, disability. If it is not based on the Quranic Iman, then it is not possible to stay motivated. And this is important, that the Quranic Iman makes it possible, because we have voluntarily come on this path. We have chosen to be on this path, and the pleasure of this path will keep us going. And because the aim is so high, which includes the hereafter, that there is no need to be not motivated. Our desires and emotions contaminate it, and we are also vulnerable to interference from others who are non-Quranic. Weak inner self is not of much use to the system of Deen. Of course, over here, what I've written is that people who are at the vanguard of establishing this system, they should try to motivate themselves as much as possible. Only those will stay motivated who have exact Iman in the Quranic Value System. Is it possible to help people create this Iman within themselves? Not at all possible. Iman cannot be created from outside. That is what I mean to say over here. People have to generate that desire and need for Iman from within their own selves. It is an individual choice. Allah, being aware of our choice, does not influence it. We know it, that Allah does not influence our choices. Same way, if I am aware of someone's non-Quranic choice, I should know I cannot influence this choice. This is very important. Sometimes we carry this burden as if we have to convince others to become mu'min. We cannot. I remember in one of the presentations by Dr. Hamid Mia, he very forthrightly and frankly explained that responsibility of changing oneself is the person himself. Nobody can impose it from outside. It's not built like that. So we need to understand it so that we do not carry the burden of convincing others. Can people enjoy more than the man-made systems under the system of Rabubiyat? The system of Rabubiyat removes khawf and huzn, fear and grief. So this is another question which comes to mind of people, that the players they are getting in the man-made system, can they get more players, of course inverted commas, in a system of Rabubiyat? Yes, it depends how we define player. Sometimes we do not recognize khawf and huzn in a man-made system. But that does not mean it doesn't exist. Its understanding provides better grasp of the issues which causes it, and then with the help of the Quran, we develop conviction to deal with them. The difference between freedom and independence. Freedom to think and not letting it to be influenced is part of the self-strengthening process. However, our physical freedom is affected by the man-made laws. Independence is related to experiencing the freedom of own existence, for example, economically and emotionally. Understanding both with a view to provide it to all within the system of Deen. So freedom and independence should be provided to human beings, and that will be maximum within the values of the Quran, and we can discuss it later on, as I said, in the final aspects of the system of Deen. Can the environment of higher self-accountability provide less stress and more happiness? Yes, there is no doubt in that. Knowing the law of requital and its functioning leads to acquiring higher consciousness. Because what happens is that as we acquire higher consciousness, we are fully aware of our thought process as well as our deeds. Even within the man-made system, we benefit from learning about the law of requital and its function. Now, there are some impediments which I have noted here to the system of Deen, and the first is inadequate Iman, not thinking in the direction of the system of Deen. We will come across members who are not fully convinced. And those who are not fully convinced, we have to be aware of it, because sometimes members they may not realize it, but by their utterances and by their conduct, one can be discouraged, not fully convinced about the life in the hereafter. And this is interesting that a lot of people who outwardly say that, yes, there is a life in the hereafter, but unless they have fully focused and very intensely thought about it, it's very difficult to be fully convinced of the hereafter. And of course, once we acquire the Iman and then solid deeds, these things then develop that conviction. Not fully accept the concept of Allah based on divine attributes. Do not manifest these attributes in practical life. But these divine attributes, through solid deeds, we have to practice it in our life. And this is a separate subject, I know, once we deal with the concept of Allah. But it is possible, and we should try it. That, for example, Allah is Aziz, then first hurdle comes in front of us, and if we give in, then we are not really using the power of ourselves to say no. So we should develop the ability to say no where we feel something is not in line with the Quran. Partially developed self which gets easily distracted by others, underlying doubts and lack of conviction. Those not fully committed to the system of Deen, recognizing these people using the Quranic guidance is an important part of our education and training. External threats, for example, Iblisi forces from all directions will try to eliminate any efforts in this direction. Naivety on the part of not so strong mu'mineen who take a tolerant view of others. This whole struggle needs extreme fidelity and commitment. It's a formula which cannot be contaminated, needs very sterile environment within our consciousness. And finally, those who are not willing to go all the way and not willing to fully commit to the cause of Allah despite acknowledging verbally the Quran to be the only book of guidance. Now this is, I put it down thinking that sometimes the human mind works in a strange way that it says it motivates us to give up. So when that thought comes, if we are already prepared and we say to ourselves, I'm not going to give up. And in any case, where are we going to go? We cannot go outside this planet. The death is still going to come to us. So why not give it a try and give it our best? Now, conclusions. Human beings, by virtue of possessing a self, are not meant to be ruled by laws made by other human beings. The Quran, based on evidence, points to the problems created by such a rule. The word of 2021 is the product of the capitalist system which has caused problems in every part of the human world. The Quran puts forward the system of Rabubiyat, a Deen, which has the ability to help develop human self by bringing out its latent potentials, and thus help man to live this life free from fear and grief, and then go to the hereafter for traversing further evolutionary stages, ascending to ever higher eminence. This task of establishing this system of Rabubiyat can become possible if those who seek guidance from the Quran develop themselves and then come together as mu'mineen and work together for this higher aim. The Quran provides complete constitution and signposting for this process. However, the system of Rabubiyat cannot take shape mechanically by implementing using force. I've come across these kind of comments, and in my previous life at a stage, I also thought that system of Deen can be implemented mechanically. Simply, we should forget about it. Deen cannot be implemented mechanically. Those who are trying to establish the system, they have to come towards it voluntarily. La ikraha fi deen, they should keep it in mind. It has to rise from the depth of human hearts and minds of those who become mu'mineen as defined by the Quran. They need to use the Quranic criteria based on divine attributes and its permanent values as an external standard on a continuous basis, and their differences must disappear. This is very important. Those working together, their differences must disappear. We recently had the experience in our other forum, Islamic Dawn forum, where somebody came with their own ideas. And previously, we experienced hadith thing, and which is very clearly we know that it is nothing to do with the Quran. But this particular individual now was creating differences from the Quran itself. That was very interesting. And I was very glad and pleased that most of our members picked it up very quickly. They have now educated themselves to such a high level that they could pick it up very quickly. Understanding the rationale for the system of Rabubiyat can help provide conviction for the need to establish this system for whole of mankind. So it is, we are on this path, which is very rewarding, and we are already being rewarded with the increase in our understanding. And what we need is that keep the whole of mankind in front of us. At any stage, some human beings are going to establish this system. And the question we should ask ourselves, why not we? Why not us? And thanks for listening to this presentation. And we go to question and answer.